Hello, everybody. It's me, Gina from AetherFlows podcast. And with me today, is literally one of my favorite people on the planet. I've been friends with him for over half my life. He's just always, okay, first off, his name's Andrew Schwich. That's not what I call him, but that's his official name. And he has just, throughout my life, he has been one of those bright, shiny people that just, he's always been super positive and happy. And I know he's gone through a lot of stuff, but despite that, he has always been able to maintain this like beautiful attitude that, frankly, in my younger years, I thought was so foreign and weird and bizarre, but he eventually wore me down and now we're friends. So yeah, I think he has a lot of wisdom to share, a lot of great stories, and that's it. That's Andy. That's Andrew Schwich right there. It's so weird to even say that name.
It is, isn't it? Andy Pants,
for the longest time. Yeah, for the longest time, I thought his last name was Pants, but where did that even come from?
Norman Truman. We lived together for quite a while, like maybe 5 years or something. And before that, I hung out with him quite a bit. And somehow or another, he just started calling me that. There's no like real story or anything. I'm sure over the years I've made up weird, funny stories, but I find that most people's imagination is funnier than, or better than, the real story. But Norman passed away a few years ago, which was just heartbreaking, and he was missed and loved by a lot of people, and so the moniker became even more special since then, and I miss him a lot. He was a fun guy, an interesting person, but he's definitely
he was an amazing
he gave me
guy.
that nickname, and it kind of stuck, and everyone started calling it that. He would tag Pants versus Normal against the world, Pants and Normal versus the world in bathrooms and stuff like that. But those were a long time ago.
Yeah. He, just to give people a little context, they were protesting, or maybe they were just around the protests during the George Floyd stuff in Minneapolis, and he was hit with a rubber bullet and passed away. So he's missed for sure. He was one of the friendliest people I've ever met, and he looked very kind of scary to some people. He had like tattoos on his face, and
his whole body, his whole face was tattooed. He was definitely intimidating despite his short stature.
Yeah, but he was just an incredible person, very just super warm and kind. When a lot of people in my younger days there was kind of a hierarchy within our friendship circles.
Sure.
So he was great.
Yeah, I think so too. Normie taught me a lot of lessons early. One of them, Norman and like Lori Barbero, one of them being like, I traveled with Norman. He took me to New Orleans for the first time, and we went to a few other places together. But people would be kind of prickly with him. They would look at him and judge him and frankly, just be kind of rude. And he never gave it back. He was always like, somebody would be like picking a fight with him and like calling him names. And then the next thing you know, they'd be sitting together having a beer, like chit chat. And then the guy who was bullying Norman would be like their best friend. And then the best part is Norman would like get their address and like keep up with them and write letters to them and stuff like that. And everywhere when we traveled by a train or car or whatever, he always knew people. And it's because he was just a bright and I guess my point, like my instinct when those people were kind of rude or mean to him or abrasive or whatever, initially as a young person was to mirror that and to give it back to him. And Norman never did. And I was like, that's amazing. And then years later, I met other people who were in the like punk scene and stuff like that, who were also real prickly and bristly, and people would be mean to them and they would be mean right back. I'm like, have you looked at yourself? Like people, not everybody is like, can fully, and so they get scared and they act funny, and then you just act rude, and it's not a good look. And I would remind them.
Yeah.
And I brought up Lori B too. She was the same way. We, just knew everybody and was friends with everybody. And what a good lesson to learn as a young person, because despite all of our preconceived notions or our immediate judgments when we see people, everybody's got something to offer, and everyone has, there's interesting parts of all of us, and sometimes it takes a little effort breaking down our own biases and stuff like that. But Norman taught me that, and so the moniker Andy Pants still sticks. I have friends here in Florida who call me that too. A lot of people who don't know my actual real name. It's kind of fun. It's a work life hack too. When I go to work, maybe they know it now because of tattoos, and I have a sticker on my water bottle that says Andy Pants. But it was a fun way to just split my.
Right. Well, I think, man, that's such a good subject to. Hey, there you go.
Sorry, I kicked my statement.
Oh, it's all right.
Full of excitement.
I think that's a really good subject to kind of segue into is judgment, and just like how that energy impacts all of us when we judge others, how it impacts us, how it impacts them, because it's so it's like just knee-jerk reaction. For me sometimes, and I've been working on this for a while now, but I remember back when I was a kid, that all stemmed from low self-esteem. It all stemmed from like self-judgment, self-rejection, this low self-confidence. I grew up in a very kind of chaotic family where I didn't have a lot of support with very much. We'll just say that. And so I just kind of internalized this sense of just like not being good enough, not being pretty enough, not being feminine enough, not being whatever it is. And then I kind of grew up and kind of embraced this simmering kind of resentment and anger, and just not really, I didn't know how to process any emotions. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And then I kind of came into this group with almost everybody else kind of mirrored that for me. It was a big kind of disco ball reflection. A bunch of people felt like that, and I kind of felt at home, and it felt like okay to judge everyone because we were all judging everybody. Like that's what it was. It was just a bunch of people looking around at each other, judging each other. I'm totally generalizing. Like I had a really good time. I had a lot of fun, but at the same time, it was I felt very entitled to judge everyone, to judge everything. And then at the same time, I kind of made myself look as weird and scary as possible. And I feel like that on a subconscious level was a lot of armor. It was a lot of armor. It was like a walnut shell of armor around me. It was like the clothes and the energy and just like, don't talk to me, don't mess with me, sort of feel to it. But when we judge others, obviously it's a reflection of how we feel about ourselves. But that energy really hurts. Like it really does. I remember when I was a kid and getting picked on or whatever, or not even, maybe just something maybe something I was projecting, whatever. But I still remember how that feeling, that like shame, that like, oh, I guess I'm doing something wrong because that person doesn't like me,
Right,
like
right.
It's a damaging energy for sure.
Yeah,
so that's been a big lesson for me.
Yeah, and you really nailed it there too, with the key word being armor, or a lot of it's a defense. We spoke a while back, and you talked about how a lot of that, I was like, I think I was showing you some of my art, and I was like, oh, this sucks, but whatever. And you're like, you're just trying to get ahead of the negativity because you're afraid that someone's going to be like, that's not good enough. So, and kind of what you said rolls into how I felt a lot of times back then too, Well, if I'm not going to be accepted by society in general or by a certain sect of people, or if I'm othered in some way, either in reality or in my mind, I'm going to get ahead of that and I'm going to present myself as what you are afraid of, or as what
Yeah.
you know, I'm gonna be that person, at least
Mm.
on the surface, and get ahead of it, kind of like you said, you know. And a lot of it was armor, and it was a lot of defense, and probably a lot of, you know, fear of those judgments, or you know, I don't know, a lot of things. But also I think that's part of, I mean, that's what you're supposed to do at that time in our age. We're in our 18 late teens and 20s and stuff, just
Yeah.
bumping around and making mistakes, and you know, sometimes doing the wrong thing, and unfortunately, you know, sometimes being hurtful, even though our intent and our heart isn't that way. That's not
Mm.
what we mean, that's not what we want. But I think that's a time when, yeah, that's what happens. You figure it out and try to dial it in, you know.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, I feel like that's kind of a big issue for a lot of us right now is judging other people. And I don't know, I've done a lot of soul searching about it lately. And this universe is a, you know, universal law is of polarity. You know, there's the yin, the yang, the evil and the good. And what if we can look past that, these actions that people we see are doing on, you know, on the news, or, you know, in your reality, you feel are bad or wrong. If we can just look past that and see that this is really just kind of pain manifesting as prejudice, as judgments, as callousness, as greed. What if we can just look past that and kind of see the pain within that?
Absolutely. I think that's the root of everything, or lack of respect. You know, people want to be respected mostly. And when
Mm.
they're not getting that, if they lash out or act in certain ways, or you're absolutely right. I remember years ago, I wish I could remember what book it was, but I was all like curious about the occult and about the devil, you know, stuff like this. I grew up in a small town outside of Minneapolis, and I was raised Lutheran, and went to church all through my, you know, probably until high school. I maybe stopped going, but I always had an interest in that sort of thing. And I was reading a book, and you know, up until I read this portion of a book, like you said, good and evil were presented to me as two separate things, that one either was or was not. And I can't remember what book I was reading, but they were talking about how that basically exists in all of us. We are all both of those things. And it's your
Mm.
own choices and stuff. You decide what you're going to be, you know? And sometimes you don't make the right choice. But that's part of it. But I guess I kind of lost my point. It was just the realization that, you know, something isn't good or bad. A person isn't good or bad. We are all both of those things at different points in our life. And of course, we likely strive to lean towards the good, right? But sometimes you got, you know, you make mistakes, and that's how you learn, and
Mm.
that's how you get better by, you know, maybe you do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing, or whatever your version of that is, that you might look at that action or behavior or statement as a negative or a mistake, but then the consequences of those actions might teach you to do something differently. I don't know where I'm going. Meandering, but
I love meandering. It's great.
yeah.
That's where you get some of the gold, honestly.
Oh, true.
Um, yeah, I mean, that's another emotion that I've been pondering a lot lately is like regret. Regret. I've talked about regret a couple of times on this show because um I was falling asleep one night. This was a couple of months ago, and all of a sudden I heard this voice start talking to me, and the voice said, "You have so much regret in your body." And I didn't really know what to think of that. So and I've never done this before, but I asked a question. I was like, "What do you mean? Can you tell me more?"
Mhm.
And whoever this was, I still don't know what the voice was, started telling me that the energy of regret, the emotion of regret, gets stored within our body, within cartilage, within our joints, and that's kind of how stuff like arthritis can manifest sometimes. But yeah, all of these negative, all of these emotions that we deem negative and not like, you don't want to feel them. They're not acceptable to you, and so you just push them down. You just you just ignore them. You push them away, and they literally get stored within your fascia, within your muscles, within your joints and cartilage and ligaments, and yeah, it's super damaging to your body and also to your spirit, to your soul. It's not natural to suppress your emotions like that. So if I could just, and this was the voice talking to me, if I could just remember how to process these emotions, a lot of my aches and pains will dissipate. And it was this long conversation that I had. I mean, honestly, I don't remember like 80% of it, but that was the gist of it. And so I've been just thinking a lot about these emotions and like why we don't want to feel them, and like different ways that we suppress our emotions, whether it's through, alcohol, which, I definitely have had a history with. My family has a genetic history with food, you name it. It could be anything. TV could be even like fun stuff, like taking trips. Like all this stuff is like kind of escapism. And
100%.
yeah, if we could just learn how to let these emotions kind of like roll through and just feel them and then let them go, instead of just like, oh no, get away from me, I don't want to do this. So
I've
that's
been reading recently too about the hedonistic treadmill. Even our good friends
what?
at Amazon like feed into that. It's just like impulse buying stuff. We're constantly purchasing and accumulating more and buying
Yeah.
more because, that, oh, I need to get such and such, that excitement and that feeling. And then you buy it and then it arrives. But what we fail to realize in those moments is that, that's just fleeting. And like you said, a lot of times you're masking, you're trying to, search for the dopamine or to avoid something else. But it's just, you're never going to win. You just keep getting more and more and more and more because, it's like a young kid at Christmas or something. You get all million gifts, play with it once, and then it sits in a corner, like it just keeps going and going. It'll never be enough. But maybe once we look deeper, ask more questions like you were asking, and you might find better answers than just an avoidance
Or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so that's a couple of things that been couple of stuffs. I gotta tell you guys, it is like 87 today. Yesterday it was 95, and I am not used to that sort of weather. So that's why if you see, I am covered in sweat and my brain feels like it's boiling a little bit. So bear with me for this kind of rambling conversation, but I feel it's
But you're
important.
glistening, you're glowing.
Oh yeah, that's what it is. I wish I had some glitter. I could get a glitter shaker, shake it all over myself. But yeah, no, it just that's kind of some of the stuff I've been thinking about lately is how can we get past our stories that we tell ourselves. Like for me, when I was a kid, I told myself I wasn't good enough, I wasn't A, B, or C. Like, how do we really, really get past that?
Yeah,
And
that's a
do you have an
great
answer?
question. That's a great question. The thing that immediately comes to mind, which we kind of touched on, is just by trying. You've got to do the work. You have to be willing to be brave. You have to be willing to make mistakes. You have to have the courage to face it. And it is a scary thing, you know, to do something different out of the box or behave in a different way than we've kind of taught ourselves to or trained ourselves to. And you know, we fit into little boxes in our lives or into subcategories or genres or subcultures or groups. And eventually that gets comfortable, and the comfort isn't conducive to that sort of exploration, you know. Sometimes it takes being uncomfortable to learn something or to grow,
Yes.
you know. And I think, you know, we might spend a lot of our lives trying to avoid pain, avoid suffering, but that seems a little not, I guess, not useful. Sorry, I don't know the language for what I'm trying to say, because ultimately that's what life is, right? You're going to have pain, you're going to have suffering, and trying to mask it or cover it up or avoid it is just ultimately masking reality, right? Like, so why not go through it and learn from it and grow, right? What do they say? The you know, I just froze out there.
Brain,
But you know,
brain
like,
fart.
yeah. The rewards of suffering, you know, you grow, you blossom. That's what I was trying to say.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what the human experience is, I think, is it's all about evolution. And if we, our souls, when we decided to, you know, plan out these lives, I don't think being comfortable is necessarily highest priority, really. I feel like it's all about learning, it's all about growing and expanding. And every time we come down here, we have different lessons. And yeah, I mean, especially those of us who've had really chaotic upbringings, you know, trauma that's happened to us when we were younger. I feel like part of us just craves that stability, you know, that comfortableness, because I can speak for myself. I don't think until very recently, I don't think I've ever felt a sense of like inner peace or just even just security or safety. A lot of times when I was younger, I've always I moved out as soon as I could. My family was very dysfunctional, and then it was just like, it was on. I just put on all this armor and I was like, all right, let's go. Let's push through this. Let's just get through the day, you know? Yeah. It's like, without having any like life skills or emotional intelligence or anything like that. I kind of just like bumbled through life, and all of this kind of started piling on top of me. And I was like, why is this all happening to me? Why is this happening to me? And I had no idea that it's because I had this inner chaos within me, and that was kind of manifesting out into my reality. It's like you feel like shit about yourself on the inside, and then you kind of attract people who feel the same way, and then you make life choices that aren't in your alignment at all, and just, you know, it just spirals down. And then at a certain point I was just like, I can't function like this anymore. I don't know what to do.
Right.
And I sort of like surrender. And you know, this has happened a few times. I feel like spiritual evolution has stages, but this was back when I was 29 or something, and I just totally surrendered. I was like, I don't know what to do, because the way that I have thus far handled life does not work like on any level. So help me, whoever, like I need help.
Yeah.
So, and then, you know, things got better. I made some very drastic life changes, but then things just kind of continued on with, you know, work. And then I kind of just substituted, you know, drugs and alcohol for sugar and for work. And then, you know, my body started like breaking down, and I'm like, man, okay, so I'm still here. Like I didn't die, so that's cool. But like this doesn't really feel like living. This doesn't feel like I don't have any highs. I don't have any lows. I just work, and that's about it, you know. And so that's kind of how my spiritual awakening, or whatever you want to call it, sort of started, was just out of the sense of like, this can't be it. Working at a diner and eating a bunch of ice cream every night, like that, and watching Dog the Bounty Hunter, like this can't be it. Come on. So yeah. So then I started searching and reading more books, and started learning about energy work. And that's kind of when I discovered that, like, yeah, you have all of these emotions trapped within you, and you need to release them, and you need to learn these lessons, like why this happened. Well, you don't even really need to know why, but just know that this is all for your highest good, and you can trust the universe. And that's one that I'm still
too.
Well, you are the universe. So it's like, you didn't send yourself down here to have a bummer time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I did. I'm pretty certain I didn't. I still do it. I still doubt sometimes. But like, you know, I don't think our souls came down here to just experience comfortableness or monotony or just all trauma and pain either. I think the lesson is to kind of learn how to transcend that, learn how to evolve, and learn how to work with that trauma instead of just like pushing it down into
There's a lot of beauty in the world, be it, you know, natural beauty or relational beauty, or and just to be able to have the freedom to seek that out, and to sometimes find it is a gift, you know. To what you're saying too about how you felt as a younger person, and that I'm sure that we've had we had a lot of similar experiences and probably similar thought processes and feelings at the time. When you're a young person who doesn't have the tools that you were talking about, the emotional intelligence, or maybe not necessarily have the example of how to go about doing things, or even how to just live life, right? People, when you observe others who appear to be doing things properly and to be living this life that maybe you think is better than yours or what have you, that make it look easy, right? But what we, or at least what I didn't tell myself, or what I didn't realize back then, was that it takes effort, right? Like, I'm happy where I'm at now. I'm very grateful every day. You know, I'm lucky to have the people around me who are around me. And my position in life now is a result. A good friend of mine actually had to like tell me this, because I never thought of it before. And I was telling him how grateful I am and all this. And he said, Andy, you've made good choices for a long time now. And your life is a result of those choices.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, what are you
it's so
talking
true.
about? I thought I was just floating through the earth and stuff happened to you, good or bad. But in reality, no. I've made choices all along the way and took different steps. And, you know, I learned the stove's hot, don't touch it. So next time you do something different. And eventually you realize that the culmination of those good choices it's a reward, right? Is a life well lived, or the freedom to be able to search for beauty or to find it, you know. But that's what I didn't realize when I was young, is that, you know, I'm not just a blob on the earth floating around letting whatever happen to me. Like,
that is exactly what I thought. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought it was. I was, you know, I don't know if I would say I was a full-blown atheist, but because because like I've told you, I've had plenty of, you know, paranormal, weird, ghosty experiences throughout my life. And so I was like, I know there's more to it, but why can't I can't see it. I think I shut it down a lot when I was younger.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of just like you said, just I felt like a blob, that I was just letting stuff happen to me, and kind of like an empty Gatorade bottle floating in the ocean, like just letting the waves take me. And I really thought that I was just having these experiences. Like, why not? Why not do this? Why not hop a train and hitchhike across the country and climb up on an abandoned crane and have all these crazy experiences? But now I realize that there was part of me that was like really just kind of making really bad decisions, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And there's something to be said for there's a time and a place to hop a train or to climb a crane or to be in pain if we're rhyming.
There we go.
And those decisions, while probably not wise or safe, and as we know, for a lot of people who continued to make bad decisions, it didn't end well. People passed
Yeah.
away because of that, and who didn't have the help that they needed or the tools that they needed to get help. So we've known a lot of people who have passed away, and who made a big impact on my life. Norman, who we spoke about earlier, is one person who made a big impact, and that wasn't fully his fault, of course, but yeah, I'm agreeing.
I think a lot of us kind of felt like we were just having experiences and not realizing that, like, the way that we feel about ourselves really impacts our choices, and that in turn impacts our experiences. And so I feel like the more kind of internal work that I do, it's kind of been entrained in me now. I just kind of make better choices. And now I have, a family that loves me, and a house to live in, and food in the fridge. And it's,
Right.
and I have the time, honestly, to like go and do research on like esoteric concepts and spirituality and all this stuff. And it's like, I feel like I'm giving myself more freedom by doing this, by learning more about myself and understanding, like, I've been saying like a lot this conversation.
That's okay. I understand what you're saying.
I'll have to edit it out. But yeah, I feel as if things are very comfortable right now for me. And so that's why I'm kind of stepping into this newer role. I don't know if I told you, but I officially opened my healing practice. So now I'm open for business.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's super amazing, and it's really scary, and a lot of these feelings, which is good, it's amazing and scary, the duality. It's great because I know that I have these gifts that can really help people. And at the same time, coming out like as a spiritual person is kind of scary on some levels. It brings back that fear of rejection and like, you're a kook or whatever, but also just opening up this business. And what if nobody comes? What if nobody wants my services? Oh no, that's another like deep-seated fear that I've been working with. And so I'm not just pushing through. I feel like I'm alchemizing this into better vibes. So
what if they do show up?
Yeah, and what if and that's another thing. What if they all show up at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something?
Well, what if you're wildly successful? What if you help a bunch of people? What if you change people's lives? Cool?
Yeah.
Every time I have one of these I can't do it or whatever, just kind of pinch myself and twist my brain into literally just the opposite of that thought. Also give that the opposite of that negative thought consideration, because in the end, they're both just that. They're just feelings. They're just thoughts, right? Like, it's not a reality. The reality is what you make it. It's your choices and your actions. And you're so right. And I think what rang true to me from what you're saying is, we were talking about just kind of floating through the life and letting things happen to you. And then realizing, like, not to sound cliche, but you got to do the work, right? Like, you got to put in effort. I had an experience recently where somebody I know was having a hard time and they couldn't figure out why I had one reaction to an event and they had a different reaction to an event. And they considered my reaction positive and their reaction negative. And my thought was, uh, I was talking with my wife and I was like, well, years ago, I kept doing the same thing and bumping my head against the wall in the same spot and just making the same mistakes. And then I would drag my ass into a bookstore and read a book about self-help or psychology or spiritual or any, like, do the work, like put the effort in to learn something and to understand why you're doing what you're doing. And so that's what I've done my entire life. If I wanted to know something, I reached out for help or I either opened a book or,
Yeah.
whereas in my experience, the other person, or from my perspective, the other person in this scenario, like, didn't do that. They just asked themselves, why is this happening to me? Or why am I this way? It's because you
Yeah.
got to make the effort, right? Like, you got to go talk to
Mm.
Gina and work your problems out
Or talk to Andy Pants. I mean, come on. All right. So, okay. So here, this just gave me a new avenue to explore. So I've never actually, because you've always been like this. I remember you when we were like 19, and you always had this wonderful, like, turn this round upside down, glasses half full sort of perspective, which was so counterintuitive to mine. Mine was about as opposite to that as you can get. But I was wondering, like, how did this happen? Like, how did you kind of curate this? You said you've always kind of been this way. I always wanted to ask you, is it okay if we talk about your mom at all?
Oh yeah, for
That
sure. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I always felt like it was kind of off limits, especially when we were kids. I was like,
Oh
oh, don't
no.
talk about that. But
No.
your mom, well, let's talk about your mom. She passed away when you were younger, and like how did that affect you? I know
Oh,
that's a huge
immensely. Yeah.
question.
Yeah, immensely. Yeah, yeah. No, but I mean that that really traces back. I mean, that's, everyone's childhood is super important. My mother passed away from a rare heart defect or disease when I was young, 8 years old. So just a child,
Aw,
and
yeah.
that colored in so much more in my life. My father, as I'm older, thank God I'm around long enough to have a different change of perspective. I have a son now, and I'm married, and all of that, and so I can see things differently. But my father at the time, it seemed like he kind of fell into a depression after that, which anybody would. It's totally
Hmm.
reasonable. And I think I was mad at, or I was upset about that for a long time, unfairly. But I think a result of those things is I felt like I had to teach myself. I always felt like if I wanted to do something or know something or learn something, I had to figure it out, right? There wasn't somebody saying, here, let me show you, here's how you do it.
Mm.
And so part of that, I think part of one of the skills that I learned, even when I was a young person, and maybe I didn't realize it, is that I had to have a positive attitude. I had to be open, and I had to be somebody that people wanted to talk to. And maybe I didn't even realize it, but like my whole life, even in middle school, high school, and beyond, like, I reached out to other people. I talked to my friends' parents. I talked to my friends about their experiences, and I tried to remain really open because it was the only way that I knew how to learn.
Mm.
Ask
Mhm.
people how they did this or how they did that. Um, and so I think that really, you know, that experience of losing my mom very young obviously affects everything I do every day, and it colored my life. It changed it immensely, which it would for anyone. But
Yeah.
as far as like remaining positive and stuff, I think part of it is that. Actually, I don't think I've ever really thought of that, but I needed to be someone who was able to approach other people and get to know other people and learn from their experiences, and especially if they had people who helped them and showed them, like I needed to learn somewhere, and I couldn't just shut myself off. And then as I got older, the whole like positive Tuesday thing that we talked about a while ago, was like we volunteered at a record store and it was like positive hardcore, and it kind of morphed into like a brand almost. I went
Yeah.
on tour with bands, and I was every Tuesday would pop up and I was pushing positivity. And what I didn't tell people, which I think I told you in the past, what I didn't tell people back then, I was always talking about Positive Tuesday and trying to get people to find the positive in scenarios and to push that and to feed that, because ultimately, you know, what you put in is what you get out. But what I didn't tell people, and people would always tell me that, like, "Oh, you're so positive, you're so happy, blah blah blah." And some people would be real crabby about it, you know,
Oh
which
yeah.
is okay, which is super okay. But what I'm getting at is, I think a lot of times I pushed that positivity. I tried to radiate it. I was just manifesting it. I was
Hmm.
doing that because I needed it. I was doing
Yeah.
it because I was stuck, because I was sad, because I kept bumping my head against the wall, right? So, like, you always have two choices: keep doing the same thing or do something different, right? And so, this was me putting my toes in the water, testing the water. Like, what if I'm hyper positive about this? Or what if I'm pushing this joy, pushing this happiness? And, you know, it works. That's what I found out, is that it made me feel better. It made other people feel better. And so many people were like, "That's so cool, man. How do you do that? This, that." And it was just, I mean, in all honesty, for a long time, it was a fake it till you make it. It wasn't, I'm just
Mm.
naturally a happy person or I'm just naturally a positive guy. It was me actually putting effort into thinking that way. And it all started with one day a week, right? Like, I can be
Mm.
crabby the rest of the week. I'll allow myself that. Or even on Tuesday, if I feel crabby, I'll allow myself that for a minute. But on that one day, if I put all of my efforts into all my 60,000 thoughts that happens in the human brain every day, like trying to counteract that with a positive thought or a positive message, like, and it occurred to me pretty quickly that it's a real thing and it actually works. You know, the wolf you feed, which one's going to win? Is you're going to feed the hatred, you're going to feed the positivity. And it's super cliche and it's super corny, but the reality is it's true. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that I wonder what Pete would think if he knew that you two kind of fostered a whole, like a whole way of being for you with
Yeah.
Positive Tuesdays.
Yeah, for sure. He was a big pusher of that, for sure. He was in a straight edge hardcore, positive hardcore, and stuff like that. And it just became such a bigger thing, you know? It's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, there were certain people in my circle of friends that, like you, for instance, and a few, and Pete and a few others that just like emanated this energy, and I didn't know that at the time. All I knew was that there was something different about you guys, and I kind of always wanted to hang out with you guys, really,
Yeah.
because yeah, because I just knew there was something different, and you had that energy that I really liked, but I didn't really understand what was going on. I just knew I was like, this guy Andy, he's so annoyingly happy, but I kind of like being around him. Like, yeah, I mean, now I know. I consciously work on my energy every day, but yeah, it really is as simple as that. Can you have, how many positive thoughts can you have in a day, especially about yourself?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
1, 5, 10. Like if you can just try to make this a habit,
That's
it'll
it.
snowball. Yeah.
That's right. And there's no wrong answer. One, fantastic. That's great. How'd that feel? You know? Let's try for two next time, you know? And even if you
Yeah.
have this thought and then reject it, just as a constant practice, you know, and then that, like we talked about, then that leaches into going to the library or going to the bookstore and buying a book, and then that reaches into, maybe I should go and talk to somebody who's actually practiced and has experience with the, you know, maybe I could share my thoughts, and you know,
Mm.
but doing the work ultimately, you know.
Hey, you have some books in front of you. What were the books that you had?
Oh yeah, that was the point I was getting at, was like doing
Speaking
the
speaking
work
of
and
like doing the
going in.
work.
We talked about this one a while ago. It's Untethered Soul. I don't know if you can see it, but that
Oh,
one
okay.
I finished recently.
Michael Singer, I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and that's, you know,
Okay.
just talking about, you know, like consciousness and like disconnecting yourself from the negativity and from being able to pull yourself away from a situation and look at it as if you were an observer. It takes away some of the intensity of it,
Yeah.
and you can kind of find the joy and stuff, and it helps you kind of sort out what's really important and what's not. Um, just anything, that one's one style of book. And then I picked up a book on Stoicism, which, being from the
Oh,
Midwest, is a huge, I didn't realize it, but there you
yeah.
go, Midwest. You're welcome. That's what it is. There's a lot of, Nordic and German and Scandinavian Stoics who, for a lot of times, I always thought, oh, we just don't talk about our problems or stuff like that. But in reality, it's sort of a Stoicism as a way of looking at it, but just getting different perspectives. And then I got, Pocket Pema as well as like a Buddhist teacher.
Oh, cool.
These were just the ones I had laying close, but there's myriad of
Mhm.
other books that I would always go and reach out to, and just kind of pen through and see if it's kind of like a test. Like, can I understand this? Can I relate
Mhm.
to it? Can I put it into practice? If not, no big deal. You tried, right? Maybe there's something else. But I just had those sitting there, and I was thinking about how that, if you have a question, there's answers out there, but you have to, you can't just wait for it to smack you on the side of the head. You have to go seek it out,
Yeah. Yeah. So with the Stoicism book, are you is it referring to like the cultural aspects of Stoicism, or are you talking about the religious?
Yeah,
Um,
like a more philosophy. That's what I've always like. For some reason, like, if you have an idea, it's a beautiful thing. But then when you put all these parameters and labels, and you label it something and you put it in a box, and then all of a sudden your idea is limited.
mm,
Um, and I guess I've always leaned more towards like philosophers and philosophy. I always found Taoism really interesting.
oh
That
yeah.
seems to be more of a philosophy than like an organized religion,
Mm, yeah, yeah, you're right about that. It's
you
definitely
know,
more of like a way of looking at things rather than, you know, especially the Western sort of organized religions where it's like just pay your tithes,
right.
confess your confessions, and give us money. And
Yeah, it's like a strict set of rules and like motions that you go through, and it seems very limiting to
yeah.
me. And then, because we have these rules and boxes, if you're outside of it, you're wrong. Like,
Hmm.
and that just tells me that maybe it's too limited of a view. I don't know where I'm getting at, but
You know, speaking of Stoicism, so my old my former mentor, her name's Aisha Love. She comes from, like, probably like you, definitely me, from like from a very Germanic heritage. Born in like Buffalo, New York, I want to say, just like similar to the Midwest, just very like stoic, very lone wolf, very pull yourself up by your bootstraps, don't ask for help,
yeah,
definitely don't rock the boat, don't express your emotions, that sort of culture. And it's like, where did that come from? Where did that come from? And how is that so strong in us? Like, I never even realized it, but my friends from Minneapolis, where you and I both grew up, all have that very strong sense of like, don't talk to other people about your feelings. Um, don't like lose face. Don't be vulnerable in front of others. Don't ask for help. Like, where does this come from, do you think?
yeah, that's a great question. Uh, I think, like we talked about earlier too, like a lot of that stuff is rooted in fear and pain and stuff like that, and you don't want to talk about it. I used to joke, uh, yeah, I'm a big fan of the television show Little House on the Prairie, featuring Michael Landon, rest in peace. Um, but I always used to joke, like, back in those days, you never hear about people with depression or different types of, mental illness and stuff like that, because they had work to do. They had to get
Mm-hmm.
out there and do the fields or take care of the animals or whatever. They didn't have time to think about how they felt,
Yeah.
which is totally not true. There was people with all sorts of different maladies and illnesses, and and different chemicals flowing through their brains and their blood back then. But I just thought it was a dumb joke, like, oh, they didn't have time to do it. But
I don't think it is a dumb joke. I think it's true. I think humans have for millennia have survived in a fight or flight mode, and if they didn't grow their crops, if they didn't, kill that moose or whatever, then they wouldn't eat, they wouldn't survive.
Right.
And so I know that the body definitely holds emotions. And so is it that far-fetched to say that it holds like ancestral emotions from thousands of years of people living like this from hand to mouth?
I think that's a verifiable fact that, what you're talking about is generational trauma. Like that's a real thing, right? Like it affected me, right? Like you were talking about, my mother died when I was young. That's a trauma that not only I went through, but also my father and my family. Like they went all through that, right? And because of that that happening, actions happen behind it. But I think it's our job as individuals to recognize those traumas and to actively do the work to get in front of it. It would be real easy to not do that and to become a person who's different than what I am or what I strive to be, and pass those traumas on to my son or onto my neighbor's kids or whatever, right? I could be the crabby old person or the depressed, or I could be, well, my life was hard. Yours can be too. You'll be fine. Get through it,
Yeah.
But like, I think it's our jobs. And I think a lot of that comes from being a parent now too. You recognize like, oh, I can't do these patterns. I can't do these actions again and again. I feel this way because something. And then, like you said, doing the work and looking back into it and what's the sort, just asking why. Ask myself, you say, I feel this way. Well, then why do you feel that way? And then ask why 5 more times, and you hopefully get to the root to it eventually. But you're almost never, after the first why, you're almost never at the answer. And so I guess to complete my thought is that I feel like it's our job, everybody's job as individuals, is to identify that trauma generationally, or if it's even modern, something that's exclusive to you, and then to do the work to heal it and to not pass it to the next person, to not pass it to the person in line at the grocery store in front of you, or, just do different, just do things differently, recognize it and make an effort to change it.
Be the disruptor.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I honestly feel like that's all of our jobs as individuals. What a great place it would be if everybody made an effort to recognize those issues and face them,
Yeah, for sure. When I was in high school, I started a support group for LGBTQ kids. And this was, God, what, 95, 94? I want to somewhere around there. And it was purely out of like selfish motives. I just wanted to get out of class. And I really liked my guidance counselor.
Yeah.
And so she was like, well, she was asking me, she's like, why do you skip why are you skipping so many classes? I'm like, and I was just like, I'm bored. I can't sit here. I can't, like, my brain was not conducive for that type of learning. So anyway, so she's the one who gave me the idea. She's like, well, start a club, that way you can have a break in the middle of the day. You can hang out with your friends and you'll still be in school technically. So I started a support group with some friends of mine, and I don't know. Apparently, that made a big impact, which I'm super glad to hear. But I reconnected to one of those friends a couple of years ago, and she now is, I don't know, she's a professor at I think in Wisconsin somewhere, and she's got a family, and one of her kids is trans. And so we were just discussing like how different being a kid nowadays is from when we were back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And she said something. She was like, she told me that she feels resentment towards this kid because they have it so easy. She's like, and my kid, they think, and she's, ever since the kid changed their name, she's never referred to the kid by the kid's chosen name. She just says the kid. She's like, the kid just gets to call themselves they and can call themselves, toast or fruit or whatever they want to call themselves. And I just feel like we didn't have it like that back then. They have it so easy now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I, for some reason, feel this sense of resentment, and that shocked me. It really did. It really, not to
you wouldn't expect that, right?
Not to make myself seem like more evolved or anything, but I was like, what? That's your child. Wouldn't you want your child to have it easier than how you had it? Like that.
What does that tell you too? Like just
Yeah.
not knowing this person. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Not knowing this person and hearing you talk about it, the first thing that comes to my mind is your friend who you grew up with still has pain.
Lots.
They're still hurting from that time because it was probably hard.
Yeah.
I mean, not probably, it was hard. I couldn't imagine that that's an easy thing to go through, especially when we were younger, where, Midwest, which is kind of remote in some cases, you don't have resources and you don't have examples. You don't see other people who feel the way that you do, and our whole lives are surrounded, television, media.
It wasn't like that back then.
Yeah, you didn't have examples of a person living a full and happy life and being gay or being trans, or even though we know these people exist since the beginning of time, right? And so that person
it's not a new phenomenon.
Right, yeah. And so that person who you're referring to probably still has a lot of pain. And to see their child not have to go through that, presumably, I can't pretend to know what they're feeling or thinking, but that's got to be hard, right? Like, why was it so hard for me? And that's just the same thing. Like, oh, my dad beat me up, you'll be fine, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that falls in exactly to what we were talking about, where it's our job to recognize that, and maybe it's a good thing that your friend was able to talk about that and stuff. Like, this is how I feel and this is how I'm behaving. Maybe I should try something different. Maybe I should get in front of it, put that shield up and not behave that way. And, it sounds like maybe they are too, based on what you're saying about how their kid is able to be in the world.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you're right. Yeah. So ultimately, you're right. Like, that probably comes from their pain, right?
Right. And I realized, and I'll call myself out on it, I did judge. I was like, wow, that's really crappy. Like, what a crappy parent thing to do, But like we've talked about this whole episode, if I could just, and not judge myself for judging too, because it turns into like this big spiral of judgment and shame, and that's no good. That doesn't do anyone any good. If I can just realize, oops, I judged. Don't do that. You don't have to judge. First of all, you're not a parent. You don't know. Like, you have no idea. Second of all, just if you can just see that person's pain for what it is and not try to feel like you have to fix it, not feel like the person is wrong for feeling it or anything. Just look at it for what it is. It's just pain, and we all have it. And if we can just have compassion for ourselves and for others instead of, jumping to judgment, I think that would make a big difference.
Oh, for sure. And what you're talking about too is it fits in the theme of our whole conversation. Everybody's going to have those thoughts. Everyone's going to have those nasty thoughts, like you said, like, I think this way about a person because of my judgment or my preconceived notion. It's not bad to have those thoughts. Everyone has them. We're human, right? We have thoughts. We think about all kinds of things, appropriate, inappropriate, nasty, whatever. But the fact that you're like, I had this thought, let's look deeper into that, or let's think the opposite, like just the fact that you're able to say, you caught yourself judging, or I catch myself judging. Funny story. Just the other day, I was hanging out with a friend of mine. We were playing some music, and it was pretty cool. He's got kids that are a few years older than my kids, and he was saying, Andy, I remember when you found out that you guys were going to have a kid, and I told him I was really scared. Like it was a hard time. Like I had my party lifestyle or whatever dialed in, and it's a life-changing thing to have a kid, and I couldn't even imagine what that life would have been like. But he's like, yeah, you were out. He's like, my kids were 3 and 5 or something, and I had gone out to a show, and it was the first time I'd left the house for a long time. And he's like, you came up to me and pulled me aside, and you were like, Sean, what should I do? Like, I'm having a kid. I'm scared. How do you do it? Like, we're in the same circles in the same community. And he said, I remember thinking, this is him. He said, I remember thinking it was kind of funny. And he said, I told you, Andy, just the fact that you're having these thoughts and that you're thinking about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and admitting that you're scared tells me that you're going to be just fine. Because there's a whole world of people out there who don't think about it at all and don't care and don't show up, but like you're already thinking, how am I going to get through this? And asking questions of other people and then, reading about it and stuff like that. But he was like, I knew that you were going to be fine then because you cared enough to ask,
Right. Yeah. If you have those deeper questions, that goes to show that you're doing, you're actually thinking about this. You're not just treating it as, I don't know, because it's a huge life decision. I remember when you were getting right before you got married, and we had a conversation, and you were like, I am scared. I am scared.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how I responded, but I couldn't even imagine being in that situation that you were in. I had just gotten sober. I think I had just rented like a little studio apartment in downtown Seattle. And I was like, oh, I have a room and a job and I'm secure and and I was like 30, I think, just learning how to function as a human. And you were telling me about getting married to your girlfriend and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, I couldn't even imagine having that kind of life. And it's like, just choice after choice. And here we are. Now I have a house and a wife and a family. And
look at you. Look at us.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Look, I know. Pat ourselves on the shoulder, right? Like we did life. We're doing it. We're doing life now.
Yeah.
And I think that's so incredible, is to like have this huge range of life experiences. I never really thought about it before. I always thought that it felt like when I was younger, going through homelessness and addiction and just all this mental illness sort of icky stuff was so negative and shameful, and I didn't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. But in the context, when I look at it in the context of everything that I've experienced in my life, it's like, it's incredible. It's an incredible range of emotions and experiences. And like, how awesome is that? That's not boring. That's not boring at all.
No, not at all. No. And it gives you a superpower, empathy and sympathy. You can see somebody else going through what you've already been through, and rather than just writing them off as broken or damaged or not worthy, you have a perspective now that most people don't have. And you can see people and you can see them getting out of those tough situations too. And I have similar experiences, and it really helps you look at people through a different light. And in this day and age, honestly, we need more of that, right? Like we need more of people seeing people not just as a label, not just as a blue or a red or black or white or gay or straight, right? Because we're all everything, right? And to just close that door on a person or a group of people it's really a disservice to everybody, because everybody has something wonderful to offer.
Right. Yeah. And closing yourself off to your own experiences, judging them as bad or not what you want, is definitely kind of shutting the door on learning more about that. Like now I feel in hindsight that having those experiences and going through those situations are, like you said, really helpful for somebody who wants to be a counselor or a guide of some sort or a teacher, because there are so many people out there that need that. You can't have a teacher who hasn't like been through the experience, then it all seems hollow. You know what I mean?
And sometimes the
Like,
best teachers are the ones that need to learn themselves, or that have learned themselves, you know. I think last time we talked, obviously we didn't film it or whatever, but I think a key in all of this is something that you said to me last time, which was, you know, we were talking about making mistakes and being kind of youthful and reckless. And, you know, I had mentioned, you know, I think some of my choices as a younger person were hurtful to other people. And I think about that kind of stuff a lot, and it breaks my heart. And I wish I would have had the wisdom to be gentler and to not be hurtful. But what you said was, we also have to forgive ourselves at some point. You can't go through your life beating yourself up because you didn't know or you didn't have the tools to make the right choices, you know, because you made mistakes. If you can't forgive yourself, you're never going to grow. You're never going to improve, right? So we have to be able to. And that doesn't mean not taking accountability or taking responsibility for actions and cases, but maybe doing those steps and taking responsibility and accountability and making it better. We have to
you don't have to beat yourself up.
Right.
It's like walking around with a 1,000-pound backpack, all that regret, all those like, all that shame and guilt, and man, there's literally no reason to have it. You know, you could have been hurtful to someone in the past. A, that was in the past, that's not now. B, if you have the capacity to realize that was an action that you did not want to take and you regret it, then you have the capacity to forgive yourself and to just not do it again. It's super, you don't have to be, doesn't have to be complicated.
That's right. Don't touch the stove again. One of my favorite poems of all time, Mary Oliver, Wild Geese. You know, what does she say? You don't have to walk on your hands and knees through the desert for 1,000 miles repenting. You know, you must only let the soft animal of your body love what it loves.
Oh,
poem, but like that one has always stuck with me, and I probably botched it a little bit. But you know, you don't have to carry that backpack. You can put it down. You can ask for help and forgiveness of yourself and of others, right? Exactly.
Yeah. What a cool conversation, Andy. I love talking to you.
Gina, thank you. I'm super grateful. This is a treat. It's a real treat.